I messed up the last worm farm that we started from scratch. So I'm back and I got a new one and we're going to establish this one. So I've already messed one of these up already. Basically, to cut a long story short, I was establishing the lower layers whilst also keeping worms in the top layer, and they just mixed up together. And you can completely understand why the worms have done that, because that's completely natural that they would go where the food is. So yeah, anyway, I messed that up. Sorry, I was moving house and there was a cyclone and I was way too busy. Good news is I managed to find this one. Now, I got this one for $20 off Facebook Marketplace. So you can find one of these for 20 bucks as well. This one's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. Shout out to the gentleman, the very handsome gentleman that sold me this. His name's Phil. I think by the time he's watching this, he will probably be in Japan, and I'm wishing him all the best. But Phil put this up for sale and I eagerly grabbed it, and he was very, I think he had it for like $29, and I said, hey, how about 20? And he went, yep. And I went, yep. So yeah, here we are. Anyway, we're going to establish this one from the start. It's going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to use a Coco Coir block, only because I have all of this Coco Coir and I'm not doing anything with it. So there's heaps of coconut fiber in here that's easily going to fill up the bottom layer, and it's all the same stuff. So this is basically going to be the exact same thing that you would do if you got one of these worm farm kits, except the Coco Coir is going to be pre-made. But I'm going to have to wetten it down anyway, so it's basically the same thing. So yeah, let's go. There's also one extra little thing that I'm going to do to this worm farm. I'm going to use some plumber's tape or some thread tape on the tap here. So let's wetten down some Coco Coir, and while that's wetting down and getting moist and damp, two words that everyone loves, we'll use the thread tape on the tap. I'm going to pour all that in there, and then I'm just going to wetten it down, just like this. Now, Coco Coir is very porous, so it'll soak up all that water. It just might take a minute. Coco Coir can also be a little bit hydrophobic, so you might need to splash it down a few times and just really soak it. Cool, let's let it soak. Okay, let's talk about this tap and the thread tape that I have. You're going to have to move. So this is our tap over here. Our tap for our this is our tap for our worm farm. Let me just take these layers off. Oh, and how great! This one's like completely cleaned. Shout out to Phil. I'm going to take this tap off. Ooh, all right. There's a rubber ring on this one that's sort of worn off, but that's all right. We can get around that. So the whole idea here is that if, I've mentioned this in a previous video, but your worm farm is going to leak from one of two places. It'll either leak inside the tap, and there's not a whole bunch you can do about that. You just get a new tap and hope for the best. Or it will leak from here and it'll drip down below. So you might have seen in some of my other worm farms, I just have this yogurt tub, and the yogurt tub would sit there, and that would catch any of the drops coming from the tap, as well as any drops that come from over here down on this tiny little lip, right? Now it doesn't super matter all that much, but it's just this tiny little thing that I want to do, and I like to do, which is create some thread tape around the thread of the tap, so that when you put this all together, it's going to make a really tight seal. I mentioned this before in another video, but you can see down here, there's two tracks that this nut will fit perfectly in. So you don't need to, I'm not sure if I'm showing that, but this is going to slide right in there. It's going to fit perfectly, so you can tighten the tap. It's a really nice little design. Yeah, you can tighten the tap without having to get extra tools in there. So let's just wrap this up. I'm not sure of the best way to do this. I'm sure there's going to be some plumbers out there that are going to have some opinions on how I'm doing this, and that's okay. But just going to wrap that up. I'm also going to wrap up that rubber washer, that rubber seal washer, because that rubber washer is really in there to stop us from, it's to help stop any leaking. But it's a bit worn, so we're just going to wrap it all up. I think that should be enough. We don't want to go completely overboard. Right, so that's what that's going to look like. Now I'm just going to attach it all together. So you might have noticed that all my other worm farms have got this thread tape. That's perfectly snug. You can see it down in there. Sorted. So this layer here, this is going to be our liquid layer. Liquid layer there. It's got this little hump, so the bottom of the tray that goes on top of this one will touch the tray. So if the worms find themselves swimming around down here in the liquid, they can climb up to this little bump and then climb back up into the worm farm if they want. But this is going to be our liquid collection layer, which is why we have a tap, so we can collect all the liquid. We can even test this if we want, just to make sure that no water is going to be leaking out. Let's do that. I need to fill this up. I'm just going to put this here just in case there's any big leakage. Maiden voyage, let's go. So the tap is completely submerged. You can see the tap being, and you can see my reflection. So the tap's completely submerged, there's heaps of water in there. If I open this, we should get water. So that's good to go now. Okay, let's have a look at our Coco Coir. You're really supposed to leave your Coco Coir to like soak up water for like quite a long time. Yeah, I mean, like I feel like this could definitely soak up more water, but we're just gonna have to keep moving forward. So let's just do that. I'm just gonna take my watch off because this isn't the work watch. This is supposed to be the Japanese businessman watch, reserved for officers. We need to put a first layer. These are the layers of our worm farm. You can see through it. This is where the worms are gonna be able to climb in and out of each layer, or up and down through each layer. It's going to allow water to pass through the layers to collect in the bottom tray. So our Coco Coir up to this lip, you can see these tiny little lips for a ledge. This is where the next tray is going to go on top of, and the next tray is going to sit on those ledge pieces. So we're going to fill up this layer up until there. Just a little bit underneath those sections for those lips. So that's actually fine, that's perfect. I feel like we've got the perfect amount of coconut fibre for our worms. Cool. Oh, did that just turn off? Why did that turn off? I'm not sure why that one turned off. Anyway, so we just poured all of the Coco Coir in there, and that's just going to sit and be nice and happy. Now our worms are just going to go straight on top of this, and this is most likely what you're going to get if you go to Bunwar. So I went to Bunwar, or Bunnings, and I picked up this pack, pretty much because it's what you guys are most likely going to buy if you go and get some worms that you want to start your worm farm with. You can start them with other worms from another colony if you want, but most people are going to use something like this. I don't know where these ones are from. They're from Worm Affair, and this is batch number 42, and I have no idea what that means. But as you can see right here, there's approximately 1,000 of them, which is perfect. That's what we need to get started. Now it's going to be a bag within the box, and the box is going to look exactly like this. It's going to be worm castings and worms. So when the worms eat, their microbiome from their gut creates the culture that we need for our worm farm to establish and thrive. So let's get all that out of there. That's what that should look like. Try not to leave any worms behind if you can. It can be tricky to see them all, but I've got a little trick for you if you're just not sure. You turn the bag inside out, and then you let it rest in one of the other layers, which we will do later. Let's have a look at what we've got. So there's a little bit of like cardboard with some worms there and sort of like sawdust and some old bark, so very much organic material. There's usually eggs in here if you can see them. I'm not seeing any at the moment. I'm seeing a lot of little baby worms. But yeah, if I'm just gonna cover everything up. So that's probably a really, really good size. You wouldn't want to fill it any more than how it's been full now. So just for proof, you'll have a bunch of little wormies that look exactly like that. So we'll just leave them to do their thing. There's going to be a lot of babies in here as well. And like I said, some eggs. I believe there's an egg here. I don't know if you can see that right on my fingertip. Cool. So that's that sorted. After you've done that, you can put your other 2 layers back on. Now, of course, there's not going to be anything in this layer. There's not going to be anything in this layer. All the business is happening down there in the bottom layer. Now, this bottom layer all the way down here, first of all, directly on the bottom, this one all the way down here, that's our liquid tray. This one that we've just filled up with worms, that's our resting tray. And we've got another resting tray here, and this will eventually be our feeder tray. It's going to take us a little bit of time to establish the whole thing, but we'll get there. At the moment, we're just working on establishing the resting tray down the bottom. Now, if you want, you can just add in that turned inside out plastic wrapper from your worms. So any tiny little baby worms that are stuck on there, they're going to be able to get themselves out of the plastic and burrow themselves all the way down the bottom layer. And hang on to this. This is cardboard. They'll eat it. There's no labels. There's no adhesives. They'll eat it. They will absolutely eat this. So you can put this in the worm farm in this one here, or you can put it in any of the other worm farms that you might have at the moment. But absolutely hang on to that. I'm not going to do anything with this right now. I'm just going to put it to the side. Cool. That's us. We're done. Now what we need to do is make sure that this is in a well-shaded, cool area with a little bit of ventilation. You don't want this to get too hot. If this gets too hot, your worms are going to die. So we don't want that to happen. We want our worms to thrive and be happy. If it gets way too cold or way too hot, pretty much just like humans, way too cold, way too hot, they're not going to like it. So I'm going to throw it up over there. So let's move this one up here. So that's going to sit with all the other worm farms. There's still a little bit of water in the liquid tray just from the Coco Coir that's dripped out. I'm going to leave it in there. That'll kind of keep the whole colony a little bit moist. We'll come back and have a look at it in about 4 weeks, which might be spliced on to the end of this video. Thanks, legends. We'll see you soon. This is the one that I recently just redid. I think I did it maybe 2 weeks ago, and normally I wouldn't, do an update so soon. But I've just had all the other worm farms up and feeding them and doing all that sort of stuff. So I thought I might as well just get this one out just to have a look. So this is about 2 weeks in, maybe, I think. I probably wouldn't have checked it earlier, but we're here, whatever. Let's just check it out. So come on, come over here. So if you'll remember, I turned the plastic sheet inside out, just in case any of the worms were still on the plastic sheet. If there were any babies or anything like that, they can crawl down into the worm farm. So now I can throw that out. This layer is empty. This layer is empty. That's okay. That's how it should be. This layer, let's have a look. Okay, so it's starting to look pretty good. There's some tiny little remnants of worm castings. All that stuff you see on the cardboard there, that's worm castings. So they're definitely getting into everything. But everything in there is doing pretty good. This is what you would see. There doesn't really seem to be much improvement. There doesn't really seem to be much happening in there, but things are definitely happening in there. If I were to scoop away like that, you would see some stuff, but I'm not gonna do that. I don't wanna do that. I wanna just leave them alone because, yeah, they're just in there doing their thing. The more we disturb them, the longer they're gonna take. I'm happy just to leave that as is. Just wanted to do a check-in. We'll be back soon in that 4 week mark, and this should all turn to like worm castings. So yeah, put all that back and let's put this back. Great. Okay, this is a brand new worm farm, the Tumbleweed Worm Farm version 2.0. This is the one that I didn't ruin this one. I didn't even ruin it. I just didn't do it properly. So this has been establishing for a while, but now we're at like the 8 week mark, I think. I think it might be 8 weeks and a few days over. So it's time to add more worms in, as well as give it a proper feeding, but let's check out what's going on in here before we do any of that. You guys come over. So that's empty. Second layer, that's empty. I don't know why I took it off like that. I could have just taken them both off that way. Anyway, let's have a look around in here. Let's see what we're working with. So this was Coco Coir, and then I topped it up with a bunch of worms, and they've just been feeding, doing their thing. Let's have a look. Great. Okay, cool. I'd have thought there would have been way more worm castings, and the worms would have gone through this cocoa fiber a lot quicker. There's still some worms in there. While we're here, I'm just curious. I want to have a look in this liquid layer. Okay, there's a few worms in there, but that is quite heavy. I'm not gonna lie, that is quite heavy, and it shouldn't be that full. So I feel like these worms aren't really eating. This isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought these worms would have been much more further along in their journey. That's all right. I'm just gonna leave them like that. And I'm gonna put all these other worms in this layer here. So I've got about 1,000 worms in here. I actually do have a lot of food to feed them, but I'm not sure that's gonna work. So I'm thinking of getting like a compost bin, you know, just for compost. But anyway, let's check these out. And let's put all of this new batch of worms in there, hoping that they'll yield some results. I'm just gonna put this liner aside for a minute. And as you can see, there are a bunch of worms in there. So there's also, I'm seeing a couple of eggs. They kind of look like those tiny little Osmocote balls. I'm not sure if you can see that there on the tip of my finger. So there's a few of those in there. Often when you get these 1,000 worm boxes from Benoit, there won't necessarily be 1,000 worms in there. There'll be like eggs which will hatch. But I mean, there are a lot of worms in here. I wouldn't say that there's 1,000, but there are a lot of worms in here. That's kind of all we can do. I was expecting this to be much further along, but that's okay. We've added some more worms in. I'm just gonna need to give them some more time to acclimate. All right, so I'm gonna leave that like that. I'm also going to put the top layer on. So this is the actual feeder tray, and I'm gonna turn this plastic lining inside out, just to encourage any tiny baby worms to crawl out of that plastic liner and move lower into the layers, so they can join all their little wormy brethren. I'm gonna put this aside because again, this is perfect worm food. I'll just run it through the cardboard shredder thing that I've got, and the worms will eat that. I'm probably due to do another one of those things anyway. I should also mention, this is all of the liquid runoff that came from like the Coco Coir. So I'm not really gonna use that for anything. I'm just gonna tip it out because yeah, I don't need it and it's not full of nutrients, and there's a plant over there that could use it. Put that back on, put the lid back on. So this wasn't exactly going the way I thought it was gonna go. I thought this would be cranking, but you know, it's still okay. Anyway, let's move it back over. I'll check in with you guys again in, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. We'll see how they're going. But anyway, I'm gonna get on with my day. I'll see you guys later.